Parachute Training School, and they're based at Royal Air Force Bryce Norton, near Oxford. 3 members of the team comprise the dropping zone party who prepare the landing area, and you can see some of them working out there on the crowd line now. They calculate where the aircraft should drop the parachute. Remember at this stage that Flight Sergeant Ty Barraclough is positioning his team, turning first one way then the other to aim for 2 very small crosses which will be visible to some of you in the middle of the crowd line where the flare is currently burning. And as the last man touches down, hold down safely. They'll now line up as the pilot positions his aircraft to your left, ladies and gentlemen. If you look to your left, any young lads in the audience, I do recommend get with the Air Training Corps if you're looking for a pilot career in the Royal Air Force. He gained the Duke of Edinburgh Gold Award and was a flying scholarship winner through the Air Training Corps, as a result of which he got a private pilot's license, and you'll see today what that can lead to. At the moment, not 700 feet. And again, that characteristic reverse wing over to positioning for a fast flyby from the other direction. The engine, of course, is a single Pegasus, Rolls-Royce Pegasus, something like 26,000 pounds of thrust available, and a full got some idea there, ladies and gentlemen, of the slight gustiness. Now, of course, we come to the real pièce de résistance of the Harrier. After about 500 knots left to right and right to left, he's now slowed down, he's left the undercarriage up, and he'll come and position in front of you for the next somewhat noisy part of the display. around the dusty part of Halton Airfield. Right to left, and I would expect this one to be the fastest.
And has a policy of maintaining fixed-wing aircraft as they come out of service for posterity. These aircraft come from Middle Wallop. The Oster today is piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Shield, who is based at Middle Wallop at the Army Air Corps training establishment. Lieutenant Colonel Shield had a distinguished service in the Army from 1955, serving in Malaya and in Borneo. Flying the Oster AOP-9. Came back into flying service in Sergeant Corsley and co-piloted by Warrant Officer James. This aircraft is a three-seater light observation helicopter flown from 1945, came to the Army Air Corps in the late mid-60s, and it ceased operational flying as an aircraft in the late 70s. Gallons of fuel per hour, but with its tank is capable of flying for up to 2 3/4 hours. And can carry a payload of about 500 pounds. Mosquito was first planned in October of 1938, just pre-war, an all-wooden construction with a wingspan of about 54 feet. That's why the industry to look at it, and it wasn't until November of 1940 that a prototype flew. Be succeeded by some 7,781 aircraft, all of which saw service and served the country extremely well during the war. Mosquito has a top speed of about 425 miles an hour. Fastest roll, and can climb to some, or could climb. And here now, ladies and gentlemen, the Mosquito in its final pass So thank you to pilot John Tugler for an excellent display.
Full old lady of an aircraft in to give us a really beautiful and most graceful display of vintage aerobatics. And has recently moved to Rushton in Northamptonshire. And flying now for some 15 years and has extensive experience on many different forms of light aircraft, and more recently, of course, in biplanes such as this. And he's been displaying the Jaguar cars and Stomp aircraft now for something like 3 years. Now his third summer. He's part of a dual partnership between Brian Lacombe and himself, the Firebird Aerobatics, and they jointly fly both the Pits as well as the Stomp aircraft. Now, some of you with some basic experience of the biplane world might well recognize this aircraft as being very similar indeed to the de Havilland Tiger Moth. Then you're right, it's very similar indeed as far as the initial appearance is concerned, but in fact the similarity stops there. Because whilst both aircraft were obviously designed and developed and indeed built in the late 1930s, this particular aircraft, built in Belgium and designed in Belgium, is in fact fitted with 4 ailerons rather than the standard 2 as fitted to the Tiger Moth. Now this gives it a very much greater rate of roll and also makes it very much more suited towards aerobatics. This particular mark of Stomp was actually licensed in Belgium in 1948. Over there in the local airport and was then brought back into France, where it also served with the Army de l'Air. A graceful barrel roll there as Roger the aircraft around. Just coming to Banbury, where he's been flying at the Banbury Carnival, along with his colleague Brian Lacombe, who's also been flying the Toyota Pits there, and you'll be able to see for yourself the completely different and quite contrasting different form of aerobatics between the Jaguar Stomp and the Toyota Pits. When you see Brian flying a little bit later this afternoon, a display sequence of unlimited aerobatics. Some more successions of barrel rolls there. Roger's having to work fairly hard this afternoon to keep the aircraft on a straight line because the large aircraft, some 30 feet of wingspan and 47 feet of length. Pass over your head. In group time, I shall say relatively little and leave you to enjoy this superb, immensely well-kept aircraft.
Same basic engine, the Merlin, the unmistakable sound. And of course the Hurricane did have the distinction of, during the Battle of Britain and indeed later, of shooting down more enemy aircraft than the Spitfire. That's more than during the Second World War. Very much the unsung heroes. Not the glamour aircraft, but certainly the workhorse. And this is a Mark 2C Hurricane. Registration is Papa Zulu 865, and was the very last of a total of 14,500 Hurricanes. Spitfire, of course, was the gentleman. Very beautiful, hearts beating, and listen to those Merlins. Was built pretty late in the war. It didn't see service in Europe, but it was modified to join the Tiger Force in the Far East. Because of the very sudden cessation of the war in the Far East, it didn't in fact join that force, and it was modified for use on photographic reconnaissance work. Now passing you with bomb doors open, showing you the bomb doors in this 1-foot carrier 12,000 pound slam bomb. Or one heck of a mixture of 1,000-pounders, 2,000-pounders, 4,000-pounders. Been a flying test bed in its time, but not for engines as is usual, but thrust.
This gives it a maximum level speed of around 260 knots. This particular example was built in 1959 and is currently used by the Central Flying School. The Jet Provis 3A is the first jet aircraft flown by student pilots undergoing training at the Royal Air Force Church Benton and Royal Air Force Graduates and students with previous flying experience are normally trained at Royal Air Force Cranwell on the more powerful Jet Provis 5A. Pilot this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, is Flight Lieutenant Paul Whitehead, who tells me he is a tall, young, dark, handsome bachelor who exaggerates a lot. He's presently a flight commander of the Jet Provis Squadron of the Central Flying School. Before instructing duties on the Jet Provis, he flew Vulcans, and before that he was an air traffic controller. He won this year's Wright Jubilee Trophy, and Paul lived originally in Coventry, but now has a house in the village of Welton near Lincoln. He spends most of his spare time gliding, holding 2 scoring diamonds at international level. Now, the right to left is the Sea Fury of the Royal Navy. so-called historic flight. The Swordfish is now taking off left to right. The aircraft in the historic flight helped to establish the Fleet Air Arm as an essential element to the fleet. The flight is based at the Royal Naval Air Station at Gilberton in Somerset, where the aircraft are maintained and flown by Royal Naval personnel. The aircraft are kept in flying condition with the help of Wren air mechanics. The Swordfish 2 LS326 was built in 1943 at Sherburn in Elmet in Yorkshire by Black. From the left you now see the Hawker Sea Fury. The Sea Fury was the Fleet Air Arm's last fighter in first line service, where it served from 1947 to 1954 and until 1957 with number 1834 Squadron of the Royal Naval Voluntary Reserve. It was also the first British naval aircraft in regular service with power holding wings. The aircraft was offered to the Fleet Air Arm historic flight in 1971 and brought to flying fitness in January 1972. Today she flies in her Korean war colours of 807 Naval Air Squadron of HMS Theseus. Joining the Royal Australian Navy when she served in HMAS Sydney. In 1957 she was converted to the target towing role and served at RANAS Nowra until the 28th of March 1966. In 1972 it was decided to restore the aircraft to flying condition and include Firefly this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, is displayed at the Korean War Masters of the Mosquito Squadron of HMS Glorious Air Group. The Firefly this afternoon is Lieutenant John Baker, who joined the Royal Navy in 1970 and commenced flying training on shipwrights. With the demise of fixed-wing aviation in the Royal Navy, he trained as a helicopter pilot and served on a commando squadron in HMS Hermes, and then ladies and gentlemen, you'll
no doubt realise that commentators can be fooled, and we have been. The Royal Navy Historic Flight has completed its display, and you see before you the Spitfire aircraft operated by Rolls-Royce Limited. This particular airplane is quite famous. Most of you have seen it before, and certainly those of you who watched the film The Battle of Britain. It was one of the stars of the film, and Lieutenant Kenneth Moore got a look at it. It was built at the Supermarine Works in 1944. So I suppose she's a venerable 42 years of age, and looking very good indeed for her age. She has a very distinguished service record. She served with some 14 units of various types, including number 350's Belgian squadron.